Today we're going to rotate the tires. And when should you rotate your tires? Typically, it's recommended every 12,000 miles or so. Basically once a year or every other oil change. So these are new tires that were put on actually a year ago, and they've got a little over 12,000 miles on them, almost 15,000 miles on them. And I don't like to go quite that long between rotations, so I'm going to go ahead and knock it out today now that I've done an oil change at the same time. Why do you need to rotate your tires? Because the weight of the engine in the front and your steering wears out the tread faster in the front than it does in the rear. If you never rotate your tires, you wait 20, 30, maybe 40,000 miles. It might take that long, it might not. But you'll start to notice the front tread is worn out more than the rear tires, especially if you're not getting an alignment when you get new tires, or if you notice you're getting a pull to the left, a pull to the right, and you let it go on, you might start to get uneven wear or cupping, where your outside edge or your inside edge of the tread will start to go bald, and you'll have nice new tread on this center, and that's gonna cause your tires to go out a lot faster. So you wanna rotate your tires, I'd say every other oil change or once a year, depending on how much you drive. And that'll help extend the life of your tires. Quick little video how to do a tire rotation. We're simply gonna take the front tires off, put them on the rear, take the rear tires off, put them on the front, one side at a time, since I don't have a full lift to raise the entire vehicle up in the air like a full service shop. This is very simple. You can do it yourself if you have the right tools. All you're gonna need are some floor jacks, and if you also want, you can use some jack stands to hold it up instead of using the floor jacks to keep it up for safety. You're gonna need either a 4-way or an impact. And the impact is gonna be more expensive. So if you don't have an impact gun or air tools with a compressor, you can use your standard 4-way to break those loose before you actually raise the vehicle off the ground, so the tires don't start to spin as you're trying to loosen up those lug nuts. And the last thing you'll need is a torque wrench. You set this to the correct torque specs for each lug nut, and you tighten them correctly before you release the vehicle fully to the ground. You are also going to need an impact socket. As you can see, the difference between an impact socket and a regular socket, it's a lot thinner and weaker. These are made specifically for the torque to break loose very tight bolts, such as your lug nuts on your wheels. But once again, if you don't have an impact gun with impact sockets, your standard 4-way should do the trick to break those lug nuts loose. So before I ever lift any vehicle in the air, whether it's one side or both sides, I pull my e-brake and I block the tire. I always block the front. Since the e-brake locks the rear, I'll lock the front with the block for safety. So as I start to lift the vehicle, we don't get any motion rolling. So if you're gonna use floor jacks, in order to get these to start pumping, you gotta spin this righty-tighty. Get it nice and tight. Now you're under load and your jack will start to raise. And where do you put the floor jack to raise up the vehicle? You're looking for either the frame rail of the actual frame or like a certain pinch weld on the body mount. So, you know, there's a pinch weld for the body right here underneath, but I'm gonna go with the actual frame. That's gonna be your first option if it's available. And as you start to raise it, be careful for anything that might be hanging lower. In this case, you can see that exhaust behind is lower, so I don't want to start jacking up the exhaust. And I'm using some blocks of wood here for better grip and I don't damage anything. Now I'm jacking this up before I even break the lug nuts loose up front because I have an impact gun with a socket And if you're only using the 4-way, then you're going to want to break these loose before you start to raise it up, because otherwise, as you start to try to turn one of those lug nuts, you're just going to spin the wheel. So break it loose while you've got weight under load on the tires. So now I've got both jacks ready to go and situated. Same thing in the rear. Be careful with your exhaust. In this case, the muffler's hanging lower than the frame, and you don't want your jack too far to the edge. You want it to be centered underneath that, so you can see I've got a nice platform to raise from. As you see, I didn't raise it very high, just enough to get it off the ground. There's no reason to raise these tires up really high up in the air, especially if you've got heavier SUV or truck tires. Just enough to clear and actually move. That's all you need. And if you're like me, some of these lug nuts do not match. I've taken the first 3 off with my impact gun, but as you look here at these other ones, they're open-ended, and that makes them slightly smaller size socket. So basically an 11/16 versus a 3/4. So I had to lower this tire back down just enough to sit on the ground, and now I have to use my 4-way, snug it on this and loosen these up. Just like that. Now that you've got your lug nuts off, this is where safety comes in very important when you're taking the actual tire off. Sometimes you'll see people try to grip inside here and pick up the wheel within the spokes. That will cut your fingers off. If you pick this up and you can't handle that weight and you crush your fingers on the rotor inside here on your brakes, always grab it from the outsides and you just want to beat it. Sometimes it'll be seized up on here. You can take a rubber mallet or just a gentle kick with your foot on the top or bottom on the actual tire. It'll come off. So now that we've got this broke loose, I just grab it. You know, you got 10 and 2, whatever this is. Here in the lower corners, I'll just grab it off just like that. Otherwise, if you pick it up inside here, you could drop it and smash your fingers right on your rotor. And now we rotate. Once you've rotated them, you see I just put a few lug nuts on there to hold it still. You want to put all your lug nuts on there by starting them just a few turns. Always start by hand. And then you want to take a top and bottom one and get those all the way down. To make this faster, I'll use my socket. And as you see, maybe not, but this is crooked. This isn't sitting on there straight yet. That's why you have to start them by hand. You always want to do top and bottom first to get this wheel seated on the hub flat before you start to torque and tighten down the rest of them. So there we go, it's nice and tight. Start our other ones. Okay. And then we can take our impact for our 4-way, tighten these more until this starts to spin. So, take my impact. Top and bottom first, and then you're going to want to tighten them in a star pattern, not in a circle. So I'm going from here to here, 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 here. But like I said, these are different sizes, so I'm going to have to use my 4-way on these two. Now I'm going to need my 4-way to tighten these. But as you see, the wheel starts to spin. So get them as tight as you can with it up in the air. And I'm gonna lower this just a little bit till it starts to touch the ground, but not completely. That way I can torque these. As you see, I had these two hand tightened all the way first, and then I did a star pattern. And after you've tightened them all, I like to do a seconds check. Back to the front, because of those two odd lug nuts, I'm going to lower this jack just a little, slowly. You turn this handle on the jack very slightly to the left to loosen it, and you'll feel it start to lower. Oh, there it goes. Right there. And lock it back up, spin it back to the right. For leverage, I like to press down on my 4-way. So as you see, those are pretty tight. And now we are rotated on the driver's side. I can lower the rear now slightly like I did the front. Spin this to the left to break it loose. Go down, lock it back up. You don't want all the pressure on there yet. Now that we're all tight, it's time for the torque wrench. These are anywhere from $20 to, who knows, even $100. But I got this for 20 bucks at Harbor Freight, Pittsburgh brand. The way this works is you've got your torque in foot-pounds right here on the back side. And as you read this, you can see it goes 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, and so on. Left and right, all the way up. And you're gonna spin this bottom handle. Well, first you wanna loosen this. Make sure this is nice and loose on the very bottom. Then you're gonna spin this part upwards until you hit the number you need. For this, I'm gonna do 95 foot-pounds because that's what's the manufacturer's spec. So you're gonna have to spin this. So now, as you can see, we're almost on the 90 dash, and we're also on 0. So right now we're at exactly 90 and 0. So 95 is going to be the 90 line with 5 here. Right there. So that is now 95. Then you're going to lock the bottom. And now you're ready. Just like any wrench, make sure you're on tight. And you're gonna hear it click when you've hit 95 foot-pounds. Again, star pattern. So those are already on 95. One more check. Star pattern. All right, 95 foot-pounds, nice and tight. Now yes, these are different size sockets on the front, but by hand, it doesn't actually strip the socket, so I'm gonna use this same socket for all 5 lug nuts by hand. Same thing, star pattern, 95 foot-pounds. There we go. One more time, seconds. Now we lower and repeat on the driver's side. And it's as simple as that. Now that we're back on the ground, completely rotated and torqued, I'm going to take the torque wrench one last time just to triple check the torque specs with these wheels and tires under load on the ground. One thing I noticed on this rear one on the driver's side, the reason these are different, they're not really different, it's just these cheap caps on the lug nuts that are falling off every few years. So really it's just time for a new set of lug nuts, but this will have to do for now. So with just a few simple tools, you can rotate your tires yourself in the garage or even in the driveway if you have a flat surface. Are you happy?